And what's up, fight fans? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Stoner versus Stoner, episode 9, almost making it to the full decade of episodes, or actually just 10. Not that grand yet. My name's Chino. I'm one half of Stoner versus Stoner. My last name is not Stoner, so you can tell why I'm Stoner. Give it up for my second host, my co-host, accredited grappler and Submission Underground grappling competitor, Don Stoner. Go ahead and introduce yourself, friend.
Hey, everybody, all the listeners, how's it going? Don Stoner here with Stoner versus Stoner. Jiu-Jitsu, black belt, under Higa Machado, school owner, a competitor like Chino was saying on Submission Underground, compete in Jiu-Jitsu, and avid fan of MMA, watched every fight. Man, for as long as I can remember, I've seen almost every single UFC. So love calling the fights with my brother and talking shop here for everybody out there listening. Thank you so much.
And Don, you're being modest with your credentials, my friend. I did a little bit of Facebook stalking on you. I saw that you are a former Pacific Northwest Regionals champion, correct?
Yep.
Are you a Naga holder as well, did I see?
Oh, yeah. Done a bunch of Nagas.
Man, you were being way too modest with your credentials, friend. You're the one that gives this podcast its credentialing. You should be a little bit more proud. Now, I know you're proud of it, my friend, and you deserve to be. Actually, you had a match this past Sunday on Submission Underground, and it was a well-fought one, too. It made it all the way to the overtime rounds, and no submission was slapped on by either. It went the full time, if I'm correct. Yeah?
Yep. Yeah, we went the full time limit. Yeah, it was a good match. Styles is just like MMA. Styles make fights, right? And my opponent, he was a guard player, so he immediately sat on his butt and started scooting towards me, called a butt scoot, trying to get underneath my legs, trying to spin underneath, do some upside down guard. And my style is, normally I'm a top game player, so I was trying to pass his guard. Got pretty close to his neck a few times, but he really defended well. And so it was really just a case in the first 5 minutes of, him trying to get me in his game, and I was trying to get him in my game. And so we both kind of just canceled each other out there. He had a good heel hook. And then in the overtime rounds, he sunk a full rear naked choke on me in the second round, and it was kind of hard to see from the camera angle, but it was a full-on RNC. And guys, if you've been in an RNC, it's rare that you can get out of a full one, but I was just able to get to the side just a bit, so the choke was on the side, and I tucked my chin in and I got out of it. Chael thought that I won the match. A lot of other people that were broadcasting and calling the fight live thought that I won the match. But anyone could have won the match. It could have went either way. It was like maybe a 1 to 2 second differential there either way. So it was just good to get out there. I was glad to get to kind of shake the cobwebs out. And any other rule set, honestly, I would have beat the guy in any other rule set. Because
Absolutely.
He had no takedowns. He had no top game. So
that was the first thing I was going to say, is that his strategy was specifically tailored to the rule set and to your style. It looked like you said, you're a top grappler. You're really good at securing hips and positions and laying heavy weight. And he did a good job of trying to flip his hips upside down to make it harder to secure any type of locking. Like you said, I think you nailed it. Anybody calling that fight could have gone either way. It really was a very close match. But if I do recall, not your last match, but the one before that, you had gotten a win in a very closely timed match as well. Like literally seconds, if I do recall. You won by about 2 seconds of an early escape. So, that just shows like the way the coin flip of fighting works. Sometimes the close decisions roll in your favor, and sometimes they slip out. But that doesn't take away from the fighter by any means. You guys both put on quite a show, especially for one that was considered an undercard match. That was probably one of the more exciting matches of the night. I really think you guys put on a show and really did your work as far as promoting Submission Underground grappling and making sure that they're more of a staple. Because the whole point of the EBI rules is to make jiu-jitsu more exciting for the people watching. Practitioners can compete with classic jiu-jitsu rules and be just as excited for jiu-jitsu. It's really for the fans. EBI was to make jiu-jitsu a more tailored, exciting experience for the fans, and you guys brought it. And that's all you can really ask for. It was a great event. I'm not gonna lie, there was a couple of snoozers on there. A couple of matches where people seemed like they were trying to kind of ride some type of rule system as opposed to trying to finish a fight. But you're gonna have that. You're gonna have what my friends used to call communist grapplers, where they just don't give anything at all, and they just take inches from you until you have nothing left. And the type of grappling isn't as fun to watch, but there's no doubting its effectiveness.
Yeah, it's crazy because it all depends on what type of grappling you like. Like the new age grapplers, they love to see the leg lock battles where both guys are scissored up in a 50-50. And for me, I'm like, it's cool, but to the untrained eye, you don't really know what's going on. So yeah, it could go either way. I mean, you could think that my match was boring. You could think some of those scissor matches were boring. Personally, I think I thought a lot of those, all the matches were pretty cool. That, like you said, there was a couple that were like whatever, but everybody brought it. And if you don't if I don't finish guys in 5 minutes, all I can expect is like an outcome like that. Like I'll either win by a couple seconds or he'll win by a couple seconds. I have some things that I'm working on now. Really, my goal is going to be the Abu Dhabi trials next year, qualifying for Abu Dhabi. It's been a lifelong goal of mine and a lot of other grapplers. So that's actually the rule set that I train. I don't even really train EBI rules. I train Abu Dhabi rules. So I train a lot of wrestling. I train a lot of points, So I'm, if you look at my history, I'm a points, like I usually win my matches by landslide and points. So, but yeah, it was just great to get out there, and thanks so much for the props. That's what everybody tells me. It's different for me. I'm like, that was sucked, but yeah.
Yeah, of course. And I think it shows that your style actually is a little bit more tailored for a point system, just because of how you seem to really focus on that position pre-submission, when a lot of these EBI grapplers seem to really kind of go Hail Mary for submissions and then just deal with whatever position they're given from there. Especially a lot of these 10th Planet grapplers, a lot of them are really able to work effectively from really disadvantaged positions. It seems to be one of their leverage points for their style of jiu-jitsu. So, I mean, with different rules, you're going to have different styles, and with different styles, you're going to see evolution. So I'm really stoked that there's still as much variety out there, because as we know in mixed martial arts, there's something that becomes homogenous about fighting styles over time, where people realize what's most effective and they incorporate it. And then a technique that used to be a surprise technique is now the new standard, which then becomes a part of your basic repertoire. I mean, back when I was fighting, the techniques that I know now, or that I knew then, that were like my bread and butter, if you don't know that as a basic fighter now, you're not even a 50-50 fighter. It's amazing to see how quickly the evolution is spurred once it caught fire. And I'm really happy to see in jiu-jitsu, even though the exposures exploded, we still see a large variance in styles. Namely in the main event of that card too. Mason Fowler and Craig Jones had their rematch, and no controversy there. That was a great fight. And talk about two completely different styles making a match. Those two guys are two different not even brush strokes, two different paint brushes completely. They have a complete different philosophy, as well as their technical angle. Did you get a chance to see that match as well?
Oh yeah, I saw the match, and it was really similar to my match too, if you think about it. Myself and Mason, we have a similar style. As far as like just waiting for our opportunity, pressure passing, catching the neck. We both have really good guillotines. And so his styles is he coasts the 5 minutes. He doesn't do too much in the 5 minutes, and then he catches you in overtime with a rear naked choke or a face crank. And he proved that it was no fluke with Craig Jones this time around. He's beat everybody in submission underground like this. I mean, the guys, seeing him up close, seeing him personally this time, and Chael comment on this. I mean, he's got a neck, man, that's like huge.
Yeah.
He's just a bulldog of a guy, and he competed in Abu Dhabi, I think at 185 pounds, maybe 170, but man, he looked like 215 or something.
Oh.
And Craig actually looked a little slim down. It looks like Craig hasn't been hitting the weights. Maybe he's been hitting the cardio a little more. But this match was a little different. Craig got a few more openings. Craig actually got on top of Mason, couldn't do anything with it. Mason scrambled out. Craig caught a leg entanglement, and Mason was doing all the right things with his legs to get out of the leg entanglement, and then ride it out to overtime where he got another face crank. And man,
it was an amazing match. I was on the edge of my seat for that one as well as yours, and I couldn't tell if I was on the edge of my seat for your match because of my vested interest or because of how exciting the match was. And luckily, I had a friend to talk to about it afterwards who has UFC Fight Pass. And the first thing he did after the match finished, before I could even text him, he was calling me. He's like, bro, did you see your boy out there? Man, he was all over him. And we were talking about the match. He gave me a warm-up for this conversation too. So I got to appreciate that. Yeah, so what was that?
Shout out to you, my brother.
Hey, of course. We got to support our own, my friend. So after SUG 17 being a great event, I'm really happy to see the interest building in that. It really looks like it's starting to kind of come forward a little bit more. And what better person to really front an enterprise like that than Chael Sonnen? Man, that guy can really get people's eyes and ears on him. He's just so attention-grabbing, so prepared, and so well-spoken. Not every fighter can become a commentator, and a lot of people are looking at these other fighters like, why aren't you doing commentary? It's like, because your boy can't talk, because he doesn't know how to stand in front of a camera without doing the Ricky Bobby things with his hands. It's not an easy thing to do, and Chael Sonnen has been one of the best at it for a long time. I'm really glad that he's really continuing to follow through with that, because we all know he's gotten some pretty rough hands in the politics of fighting. But we can play a little catch up. We did skip last week's podcast because you had a match, and I, of course, am in the process of moving still. As you can tell, our backgrounds here are going to change every week on my side until normalcy is reached. But the fights that happened beforehand, if I'm not mistaken, the last fight we covered was the Miocic and Cormier. So the one that we missed, that we skipped, was the Edgar and Munhoz fight. We didn't get a chance to talk about that. Yeah, correct?
Yeah, we did not.
Just want to double check, make sure I'm not covering old ground. We had that fight picked. You had Munhoz. I had Edgar. We both agreed that it was probably going to go the distance. If it didn't, it was going to go to Munhoz. It went the distance. It was a hell of a fight. After those rounds, we had a pretty close decision. It was split, and it ended up being an Edgar, the one I called, debatably so. A lot of people are screaming for Munhoz in this. It really depends on what you believe wins fights. And we keep talking about this, and it feels like over-treaded ground, where it depends what you think makes fights. Is it the leg kicks? Is it the power shots? Is it the number? Is it – the problem is that we have no consistency. So we don't even know what to argue. If we were using the same consistency of the previous fights, if we're using the same consistency of Max Holloway versus Volkanovski, then Munhoz should have won that fight. But there's no – it's the Wild West. What do you think? What do you think, Don?
Man, that for me, that fight was like probably the best fight that I've seen in the last few UFCs. I mean, for one, I know Pedro. I know his story. I know how he came up, and I know his style inside and out. And it's tough to say. I mean, Pedro landed so many leg kicks. He broke Frankie Edgar's leg down. He kept kicking the leg, low calf. He went up high to the thigh. He broke the inside leg down. And, he got a little reckless in the middle rounds. And so he lost the middle rounds because he wasn't putting together combinations. He wasn't using his jab. Once he started firing that jab in the later rounds, he landed like almost every single jab that he threw. He was landing almost every leg kick. And Frankie Edgar was landing three punches, but they were little pot shot. I mean, I don't even think he backed Pedro up with one shot in that fight. And you can make the argument of like Floyd Mayweather, but Floyd Mayweather doesn't get hit. He comes in pot shots, but he doesn't get hit. Edgar got hit, and Edgar got hit hard. Pedro landed all the power shots. Pedro was going forward the whole time. Pedro, I think, won that fight, and for me, it was decisive. For me, it was unanimous decision, decisive, and you talk about, well, Frankie Edgar has a name. Was it that? Frankie Edgar has the push. He's coming back. People love him, but none of that should count in this fight, man. I mean, I really think Pedrinho won that fight. It's not fair if he goes down the rankings. I need to check to see if he did. I know that Frankie Edgar is now ranked number 5, so he did take Pedro's spot. So I'd assume now Pedro's number 6 in the rankings, which is not fair at all, in my opinion. But at least Pedro didn't move down, below the top 10, but still, he should stay up in the top 5. And they should rematch. They should really rematch, because that's the type of fight where they're both right there for the title shot. What do you think?
I agree. And, I had picked Edgar to win the fight. And after the fight, it didn't feel like a win. It didn't feel like a win, Don. I'm not going to lie. I needed to win badly in our race to be the Stoner versus Stoner August champ. And it didn't feel good. It felt like a dirty W. I'm not going to lie. Because I watched that fight and I saw so many parallels between Max Holloway and Volkanovski that it was staring me in the face. And I remember when it was coming to the judges, I'm like, if Edgar wins this fight, we have a problem. Because there's no consistency. There's no judging consistency. There's nothing for fighters or coaches to rest their head on as far as a strategy that is decisive when it comes to pick shots, when it comes to, attacking a leg or fighting a specific range or targeting a specific area. There's no cap for damage or for, a punch being worth the same amount of scoring as a kick, which doesn't feel right. Maybe a jab and a leg kick are about the same, but if we're talking about significant strikes, calling leg kicks significant strikes, I think that should change the criteria. Because right now, a significant leg strike is just an unchecked leg kick. That doesn't sound right. I think the 10-point scoring system's archaic. I'm going to say it till I'm blue in the face. I say it every episode, and I'm going to say it again because this is just another visual of that. We got another Max Holloway, Volkanovski decision on our hands. And anybody who's fans of either one of the fighter probably didn't leave that feeling very good. But the one that did were the ones who didn't have a vested interest. If you don't care about who won that fight, holy shit, was that a good fight. That fight was awesome. If you had no care about who won, who lost, and the splits of the odds, you're the one who won. You got fully entertained by that fight. That was a killer fight. Both fighters put everything they had out there, and that was fantastic. The rest of the card was pretty exciting, actually, as far as the main card goes. A lot of finishes. Before that, we had Pacino and Mike Rodriguez. I believe you had Pacino in that fight, correct?
Yes, that was my worst pick of all the history.
Man,
I should not have went for that guy at all.
That was a dirty dub, man. That was hard to watch. That was one of those fights where you're like, you don't want to say that it was a mismatch, but one person got title whipped, and it was the one thing I could say about it was at least it was quick, because if that fight would have gone on for another round, it would have just equaled an injured fighter. That's one thing that we're seeing with COVID. And we're seeing with the split of the United States, North America fighters and the European and United Arab Nations, and those fighters being in the Dubai ones. When you see a split of international to national fighters like this, you're going to get a huge competition difference between certain fighters just because of the lack of availability. Now, I don't think Sean Shelby saw that there was a huge mismatch there. But, I mean, how could you really guess that was coming? You can't really tell when a fighter is going to hit a stride the way that Rodriguez must have in training for this fight, because he hasn't really shown too many ultimately dominant performances the way he has. And then he comes out with a performance like that. What do you think about that, Don?
I don't think Pacino is going to be in the UFC very long, to tell you the truth. And that's not, a surprise to anybody. I mean, Pacino had just beginner striking, man. And he just got clipped at every moment. And, the UFC is trying to they're trying to they're signing so many new fighters. They want to bring in new fighters, and I think they want things like to weed out some of the guys that might not be UFC caliber. So yeah, I just don't think Prashino's in UFC. I think Rodriguez proved that he'll have another fight or two to see how he stacks up. Maybe he's hitting the stride, but yeah, not so much for Prashino.
No, he's not the flavor of the next week, unfortunately for him. But who knows what he's got to come? He's still a young guy, so there's still hope. There's still a lot of daylight there. Fight before that, Austin Hubbard versus Joel Solicki. I didn't watch this fight. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I left my spot on the couch for 5 minutes, and I came back to see that somebody had won. It was a quick one. It was, a minute and 15 seconds, a minute. So the only thing I could say about that is I'm okay with it having stood up during that fight because there's not much to break down. It was a pretty clear-cut winner there. What did you see there, Don? I didn't get to see it.
And we didn't pick. Did we pick on that fight? I can't remember. But
no, I believe that was a Phil fight.
Okay, yeah, I was going with Hubbard because Hubbard had a great fight his last fight against a really good guy. I can't remember who it was, but he stuck it out. He showed some really good boxing, some really good MMA striking. Austin Hubbard's not going anywhere. He's gonna get a few more fights and hopefully build himself back up. I didn't know about this Joe Solecki kid. He ended up going for a takedown, taking the back and submitting him. And before that, he was just striking shot for shot with Hubbard. So he was just way more well-rounded. And I think it was 14 years or something for him to get to the UFC. So the guy's very, very well trained, very good fighter. So we need to look
hungry.
out for Solecki. Yeah.
And hungry. If it takes that long to get in, once you get in, you're a dog and you don't want to let go of that piece of meat. That's for sure. And he, I'm assuming he really showed that because when you see a minute and 10 seconds on the fight card, you really don't have – there's really not much to say about that except for good old-fashioned ass whooping. Before that, we had Argapova and Dobson in the ladies category, and I was happy to see the fight go the way it did. I had picked Dobson. Which I don't think either pick is a bad pick in this fight, in pre-fight. Both of them came to the ring with pretty equal records with devastating styles on both sides. Agapova, really aggressive, likes to be heavy on their opponent. Dobson, very fast, really good at picking angles. And it was really a good fight in the first round. Really got to see a lot of changing of rhythm. Got to see a lot of pace push from both sides, but then Dobson kind of made it a pretty clear acceleration in the second round and just didn't look back. Did you see the same thing on that one?
Oh, yeah. Saw the same thing. Dobson came out of nowhere. I picked the other girl because of kind of her record, but she was just so reckless, man. I've never seen a fighter as reckless as this chick. I mean, she came out hot out of the gate, throwing everything in the chick with the kitchen sink at Dobson, and Dobson just took it and kept coming forward. And and this girl, it's a type of thing where when you fight like that, reckless, anything can happen. She made like 15 mistakes in that first round that I saw. I mean, just every mistake that you can make because, she threw herself out of position. She's launching her body, passing guard. She's flipping over. She's doing all this crazy stuff. And then Dobson Dobson may even have sensed like, hey, she's going to gas herself out. And then once Dobson got in her spot, she got the win. So that girl's a really exciting fighter. I can't pronounce her name. I forgot what her name is.
Agapova is the last name, I believe.
She's from Kazakhstan, blonde chick. She's definitely marketable. She definitely fights like, people are going to watch her fights if she, but she's a 50-50 fighter until she gets her crap together, and you could tell she's a young fighter and maybe she's just bulldozed a lot of the other fighters that she's fought. But I mean, in the UFC, you can't fight like that. Yeah.
Well, what I thought was interesting is in the tail of the tape and a lot of her clips, I didn't see that side of her fighting. She was aggressive. She is normally a cage a cage clinch fighter. That seems to be kind of her style. But she was very over aggressive. I couldn't agree more. I think that she saw a lot of threat in Dobson, and I think she wanted to kind of bully her up in the beginning because Dobson's kind of known for taking the reins early and then guiding the match the entire fight. So I think she was trying to beat her pace. I think she was trying to break her in the first round so that it would set up for an easier second or third round. But I think what she didn't attribute for was Dobson's superior cardio and Dobson's ability to ride a wave. Dobson did the smartest thing she could do. When you're fighting a fighter that necessarily doesn't have that knockout power but is flailing and wailing, let them throw. Give them every opportunity they have to tire themselves out. Pull them down to the ground and let them sink and be like quicksand. Keep their limbs as far out away from their body as they can, and every time they struggle, make them sink deeper. And that's exactly what Dobson did. By the time the second round came, there was nothing left in the tank. And Agapova was like, well, certainly she's as tired as I am. No, she's not. She breathed. She kept her breath. She used her combat breathing, and she used her pacing and really just outclassed her opponent in terms of strategy. Physical output, I mean, Dobson, I don't think she put away her opponent. I think she had an opponent who was visibly exhausted. I think she did a good job of outlasting her opponent, but she didn't break them. She didn't break her with her technique or with anything flashy or with anything other than just good old fashioned wind. I mean, cardio wins fights. And if you can't make it 3 rounds, that's where you need to start training. You know, don't even worry about the hands or the positioning. You got to start worrying about, you know, where your body is come fight time. Because I don't know if that was like a weight cut thing or if that was just poor conditioning in the training camp. But she was done. She gave up that fight. I wouldn't call that a knockout by any means, or I wouldn't call it a KO or a TKO. She pretty much gave up.
Yeah. Agapogovs is a very just rough. I mean, she has a similar striking style to young JJ Champ, Joanna Young Jacek. Just reckless, just throwing herself at the opponent. So
yeah, no patience, no control, just a very emotional fight. And that makes me wonder what was going on outside of fighting for her when she went into that fight. You know, that's for me, if I was in her corner, that would be the number one sign of a fighter losing focus. That's a fighter who lost focus from their game plan because of some emotional transgression, whether it's the nerves or maybe they lost a family member or somebody left their camp or who knows. You know, there's a lot of things that can happen leading up to a fight. Life doesn't stop because you have a fight coming up that weekend. So who knows what was going on in her world. I'd like to think it wasn't just what the most obvious answer is, which is just a bad camp. But, you know, it's to be seen. I haven't really seen any fight news on it since, so there's no way of knowing. But the card after that, the following week, we had a UFC Fight Night with Smith versus Rakic. You got Rakic, I got Smith. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't think Smith was going to win that fight at all. I wanted the numbers. I was down in our record count, 7-11, and I needed 4 wins, and I didn't get them. You're the August champ. I admit it. You deserve it. This was the first fight of your crowning victory, though. It pretty much happened, I think, the way that I thought that everybody thought it was going to happen. What do you think? What do you think happened there, Don?
Just, I was just so impressed by Rakic. I mean, fighting Anthony Smith, who's fought the best of the best. He literally fought every guy that you can think of that's on the top of the food chain. And he's had mixed results. He's had some big wins himself, Anthony Smith. But Rakic, I was impressed by the way he was able to take Smith down and control Smith. And he was talking about before the fight, he's like, I can't respect this guy. I can't show him any respect. This is going to be like a sparring match. I'm going to go in. It's going to be like an easy sparring match. And, the mindset that he came in with that fight is like one of the best mindsets to have, especially when you're fighting Anthony Smith. Well, Anthony Smith, if Anthony Smith loses his momentum, a lot of times he'll crack. He's always dangerous. Anthony Smith is a guy who's always dangerous, But if you can get the rhythm on Anthony Smith, you can win the fight and you can control the fight. And, the ground positioning that I saw from Rakic was so great to see. And I think Rakic, man, he's going to be at the top of the heap. He lost against the other guy from Switzerland, the big guy. What's his name? Bald guy.
He's fighting again soon too.
What's his name? He got in a domestic violence. He knocked some guy out of the club.
Yeah. It's on the tip of my tongue. Anyways.
Ozdemir.
Oh, Ozdemir. Yes, thank you.
Ozdemir. Yeah. He lost to Ozdemir, and Ozdemir's a huge light heavyweight, but yeah, besides that, he's won all his UFC fights, and I think he's going to be a real contender, man. He really, really dominated Anthony Smith in that fight. I thought Anthony Smith was going to have something, maybe a Hail Mary, something, but he just he had nothing in that fight, man. And I was like, I was really impressed by Rakic. I really like that guy. I really like his style. He's really solid. He's really tight with his striking, great defenses. Powerful guy, and just his wrestling too for a European guy is like really, really good. He's Serbian, he's Austrian, he's something else, Chechnyan, who knows? But
yeah,
I just killed it.
And super clean in his technique. Everything is so well fleshed out. Every pivot, you can see when he throws a jab cross combination with the kick. He's already preset his foot in the pivot so that he can throw the kick without having to do that stutter step. Man, just simple stuff like that really, like, it looks like cutting corners, but it's actually just the most efficient way to fight. He really is just a gas pedal fighter, really good at setting a pace that's hard to keep up, and really good at keeping a technical drive that just looks frustrating. When you see somebody fighting you that technically and having success, it frustrates you. It makes you think, God, not only is this guy kicking my ass, but he's looking good doing it. And that doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel good at all. I think it's time for us to start talking about the damage that Anthony Smith has taken in his past few fights. You look at his loss to John Jones, he got beat for 5 rounds, just got hammered on. And then Glover Teixeira knocked his teeth out, broke a bone in his face that had to take time to heal. I know Anthony Smith is a relatively young guy, but I mean, we should also start talking about the fact that all of his teeth are fake and that his jaw's been broken in 2 places. Maybe it's time for him to take a breather for a little bit. I don't know. He did look good. He did look good coming out, but man, what a way to end a coming out party than to have Rakic fighting you. Because man, that guy will put rain on any party you got going on. If you're fighting him, it's going to be a bad time. He's just not the type of fighter that you want to get in the ring and mix it up with. He's got something for everything. He's a Visa card. He's accepted everywhere. You want to do it on the floor standing up? Fine. You want to go against the cage? Fine. You want to go on the ground? Even better. He's a tough competitor and a great example of the new school of fighting, of the fighters that are able to really mix up the techniques and blend techniques seamlessly. We're really seeing a new jump in the sport where people are able to blend these masterful techniques together.
Yeah, and when I look at Anthony Smith's record, right, he has 49 fights. He's 32 years old.
Yeah.
So, and he hasn't been fighting forever. What's he been fighting since 2008? So he's had a solid 10 years of fighting, right? So, man, that's a lot of fights. And when you're fighting in light heavyweight, I mean, taking the shots and especially like taking the fight with Glover Teixeira for me was just brain damage city, right? That was just the one where we're just like, man, and he's losing teeth and he's doing all this.
Hard to watch.
He had just fought a drug dealer that broke into his house the week before and went, and had to fight this guy off who broke into his house. So he's going through all this mental stuff, and then he goes out and he fights Glover Teixeira. But, hats off to him, though. He beat Rashad. He beat Shogun. He beat Ozdemir. And he also submitted Alex Gustafsson. So, and that was just 2 fights ago. So that's a guy who's like, when he's on, he's on, when he's off, he's off. And so I can't say that he's going to be, done or he's towards the end, but I would like to see him maybe at middleweight. earlier in his career, he was a middleweight. He was a 185er, and that's when how he got in the UFC. He was a middleweight. And now he's a 205er. And he's not over muscular. He's tall. So I think that maybe the next move for him is going to be going down to middleweight after these last couple losses.
Well, middleweight would be no vacation for him either. I mean, we got a pool of killers in middleweight too. It seems like just about all the divisions are completely stacked. I would say, honestly, the only ones that were maybe lacking previously were, I would say heavyweight would be slightly lacking in its depth. And then we got John Jones moving up. So all of a sudden that gets more interesting. And then I would say that there was a huge competition spread in light heavyweight. But since, once again, John Jones is leaving, that bridges the gap. Now light heavyweight's all of a sudden exciting again. I honestly, I think light heavyweight should be the most exciting weight class of all the divisions. It's got the speed of possible middleweights, welterweights, and it's got the power of a possible heavyweight. But it hasn't been that exciting lately because we've had a technical king reign supreme over the light heavyweight division for several years now. And the only time that he was taken over was by somebody that he hated the guts of and didn't do it in the classic traditional way of taking someone's belt. He went about it the circumvention style, and that only fueled, I think, his disdain for the entire division. I think he wanted to make sure that he completely closed it out before he left, and he did.
Yeah, no, he definitely did. But I mean, how frequent does John Jones fight? And when they get to these high levels like this, they fight once a year, once every 2 years. Taking in consideration every other year, John Jones gets into some legal trouble, so then he's out for another 2 years or whatever, picograms, horse meat, whatever you want to call it. Man, I mean, I don't think John Jones is going to do good at heavyweight. I'll say it again. I just don't think he is. He fights Brock Lesnar. Yeah, John Jones will beat Brock Lesnar. Will John Jones beat Stipe? I don't believe he will.
Yeah, I don't know if he beats Stipe either, but he is getting that match immediately. Dana White has already expressed that he's not going to waste time making Jones climb the ranks. Someone as dominant as Jones gets an immediate title shot to become a champ, or at least a champion of two classes. I think if you don't give Stipe enough time to prepare for Jones properly, you might get a Jones victory. Because I think that Jones may have fought people somewhat similar to Stipe. I don't think Stipe's fought anybody like Jones. I think Jones has fought a few people in his developing career where he had some pretty heavy weight mismatches where people either weighed in way over or he actually fought a heavyweight for a promotion. And he trains with heavyweights. So I know he knows what it feels like to be under that much human. But the question is, does Stipe know what it's like to fight that much champion? Because John Jones is a remarkable fighter. I mean, as much as I don't agree with how he lives his personal life, or at least how much I know of it. Of course, the media has a way of distorting things. And I guess we're considered media since we're talking about it. So I guess I'll call ourselves out a little bit there. But when it comes to his ability, bar none, I mean, I think the only person that even has a claim for pound is either him or Khabib. And that's it. That's it. Everybody else is a far third place. Not even close. Khabib and John Jones are the two top potentials for pound. And I think if John Jones beats Stipe, I think he gets it. I think he ultimately gets it. And I think in order for Khabib to get that back, he would have to beat GSP if that fight is to happen. So I don't know. A fight, man, I'm so excited to hear about Jones and Stipe when that gets announced. I mean, Stipe's got months of recovery ahead of him. He took a beating a little bit in that DC fight. So, and we know he heals kind of slow. He's one of the guys that does need a little bit more time, but it's a heavyweight. I mean, we're talking about people who are literally 100 pounds more wailing into each other. Of course, you're going to end up with broken bones and even just stretch fractures in your hands or stuff like that. Of course, you're going to develop more injuries. You just have more people slamming into each other at that point. But yeah, no, I disagree. I think Jones could win. I think it's going to be an exciting fight. So, I think we should have a side bet for that. Like, look, we're trying to win Stoner versus Stoner for the month, but I feel like that fight is worthy of its own side bet. So we'll think of something. I'll put my head to it a little bit.
I'll wear a pink gi for a whole month. You win that fight. That's how confident I am that John.
Yeah, but if it's in October, then everyone's going to be like, wow, look at you, Don, supporting breast cancer awareness. You're just such a good guy. And it's going to backfire on me, Don.
That's how confident I am. Hey, if it backfires, it backfires, man. But, but the cool thing is John Jones is talking about he's going to need some time to make heavyweight. He needs to put on some muscle. We know he has a perfect body frame to do that. He needs to train with more heavyweights. He needs to, create a plan. Really, he has to build up his confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the cool thing too, because, in light heavyweight, John Jones has so much confidence. He goes in and breaks guys down, and he just takes their confidence away. He's so confident. He knows how to break guys down, and he knows how to let guys throw their biggest shots and then come back. That's a problem with him in heavyweight, because you can't take Stipe's top shots. That's really the thing. So he has to completely change his style. He's not going to take down Stipe in the round. He's going to have to, utilize stomps, and he's going to have to utilize eye pokes. He's going to have to do all the dirty stuff early, but he has to keep him away. And for those first couple rounds to wear him out. And that's why I question John Jones at heavyweights. Like, can he hold these guys off for even a round?
Yeah, that's a fair point. Especially if we're talking about the smaller ring. If we're talking about a 25-foot ring, you definitely have an advantage as far as wrapping up with him. But John Jones has shown us how dangerous he is in the clinch. Miocic, I don't think, is so much of a danger getting the fight from standing to the ground. I think he's going to want to box it with him. I know he did. I know we haven't seen much mixed martial arts from Stipe recently, because he fought such a credited wrestler, and he really had to take that fight and keep it to the boxing range, which he did a great job of doing, trying to stay out of the clinch and trying to stay out of Daniel Cormier's grips. But I think he would have to diversify his strategy a lot more if he were to fight Jones. Because I think if he tried to do the same thing with Jones they did with DC, he gets his ass kicked. And bad. I think Jones has him heavily outclassed in the striking. And then when you look at the tail of the tape for the reach, it's one of the few fights that John Jones isn't the superior. But at the same token, it's one of the few fights that Miocic isn't the superior in reach. They're pretty much dead even in their arm length. And as far as when it comes to who finds the range with their legs better, I'm going Jones. So I'm only seeing one place where Miocic really wins, but it's just a high chance that it's going to end up in that place. So, it's a complicated fight to break down, especially when you're talking about the move up. But Jones, naturally, if he didn't have to do weight cuts, would probably be a heavyweight. Look at his brothers. Look at his football playing brothers. Those are some big, scary dudes. Imagine if those guys can throw some flying knees, huh? Get out of here. It makes me wonder, like, is John Jones the most physically talented Jones? What if his football playing brother is the more of the physical athletic specimen? And what if we got the wrong Jones fighting? You never know.
Yeah, because his brother Chandler and Arthur, they're some beasts of men. I think, it was probably just a fight for them to get a sandwich at their house growing up.
Yeah, and John looks little, so that means he lost those fights. He wasn't getting the sandwiches. Poor John. We should create a hashtag called Feed John Jones. So the last fight I want to talk about on this card, because let's be honest, the other two were a little bit long-winded. They went to decision. They weren't very exciting. But Neil Magny and Robbie Lawler, that was an exciting decision. Lawler put up a great performance. But he's only looking like a shade of his former self, unfortunately. I think if we had a younger Lawler in there with the current Magny, it might have gone differently. But Neil Magny is a hell of a competitor. That guy is an absolute warrior to all standards of the word. And it doesn't just reflect in this fight. It reflects in his past 4 fights in the UFC. He just really brings a hot temperature to the ring and just cooks it. What did you see in the ring with that fight? Did you see anything that stood out?
Yeah, that fight was it was just a classic example of a guy in Magny who's on his way up, who's kind of flown under the radar, even though he's beat almost everybody, man. I mean, you look at Magny's resume, and he beats like all these guys with his striking movement, and really his game planning is what I'm so impressed. It's like he knows when to clinch the guys, he knows when to take them down. He does everything at the exact perfect moment. He goes to the back like a jiu-jitsu black belt, and then you have Lawler. In Lawler's, the problem I have with Lawler fighting Magny is Lawler's already had his second win. He's been fighting forever. He had those fights with Nick Diaz back in like 2005.
Mm-hmm.
And then he just was a 50-50 fighter. And then he came back. He had that second win. He got with Henry Hooft. He got with ATT, American Top Team, and he got with that squad, and they took him to the title, and then he lost it. So he's already had that second win, and there was a time when Robbie Lawler was like unbeatable. He was beating Johnny Hendricks, he was beating all these guys, but then now is not the time to put Robbie Lawler versus Neil Magny. Now is the time to have Robbie Lawler fight like Jim Miller, and they're in different weight classes, but he needs to fight some veterans like that where it's going to be more of a fair fight. I think Robbie Lawler's probably on his last couple fights.
Yeah, they should give him his payday fight, like how they did with Shogun and Lil Nog. Give him one more rival to put your hat on, and then if you want to retire from there, you could do so gracefully. Or if you want to be like Shogun Hua and just fight until your eyes cross, then you have that option. But no, I agree. I think the best Lawler we saw was him and I can't believe I'm forgetting. How am I forgetting the last name? It was their second fight. It was one of the most amazing fights. Not McCrory. Anyways, Robbie Lawler is responsible for giving us some of our most cherished wars that we've ever seen in the ring. I mean, this guy has countless amount of times put his front foot toe to the mat and swung with everything he's got and come out the victor, come out the defeated. It doesn't matter. He gets back in there and he keeps it tough. I agree with you. We need to adjust his competition level. I don't think he's making another run for the championship, and I don't think he's happy with being a gatekeeper. Give him a legacy fight. Give him something that he can go out on that he could feel proud about. We're giving these opportunities to some of the other champions. Donald Cerrone got to fight McNuggets, and and then we had who was it? Man, my brain's not working so good today. Too much of the stoner. We're seeing a lot of these legacy fighters get their final opportunities for wrap-ups, and I agree. Robbie Lawler should be in line for that.
Another thing that happened with Robbie Lawler is he's one of these fighters that he changes camps every other fight. That's really, 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 really dangerous to do. If he was still with ATT and he lost the title, instead of switching camps, he would have been able to stay with ATT in Florida and figured out what he needed to do to get the title back, or to at least to stay in the top 5, whatever. But he switches camps. He has trust issues. Robbie Lawler's been in, I don't know how many camps, probably 10 different camps. And when I talk about camps, I'm talking about the trainers that he employs. He switches camps when things aren't right. He switched camps when Kobe Covington came in as the next guy, and then ATT started putting time in Kobe Covington, so he left, went to Henry Hoofs, had a little success, left, went, and now I don't know who he's with, someplace I think in Colorado. I don't know where he's at right now, but that could be it too, man. That could just be a different camp, because every time they go to a different camp, they go, hey, Robbie, here's the reason why you're not winning fights. And then they try to switch up his game, or they just listen to him and they just say, Robbie, what do you think we should do? If they're novice trainers, that's really the worst thing, because then you're just going to let Robbie Lawler keep his same style. He's never going to change up his style And that's what you saw with Magny's. Magny's using all the newest techniques. Magny's, you can't be a brawler against the top level fighters right now in the UFC. You have to be very strategic, develop a game plan specific for that fighter. And it doesn't look like Robbie's doing that. He's just going on hard alone, and hey, Robbie Lawler's everybody's favorite fighter, at least, you can't say Robbie Lawler's not a warrior, but
Right. Absolutely not. And the fight I was thinking of earlier with him was him and Rory McDonald too. That was,
oh yeah.
bar none, one of the greatest fights that has ever taken place in the ring. And I think that's honestly pinnacle Lawler. I don't think you'll find a better Robbie Lawler than you found in that fight, or a Rory McDonald. I mean, he continued his fighting career still after that, and even moved to, I believe it was Bellator, and still had a really successful career out there, because that guy's just a savage. I've heard a lot of fighters talk about how he just channels into this like dark side, and people don't even want to get in the ring with him because he's just such an asshole. Some fighters fight, and some fighters fight like assholes, and that's a completely different level when you're dealing with somebody who's not making friends in there, when they're stomping your toes and all those things. So we got some interesting fights coming up. Since we were speaking of gatekeeper fights, this is another gatekeeper fight to talk about. The main event, Overeem versus Sakai, a perfect example of a gatekeeping fight. Alistair Overeem and Augusto Sakai will be fighting at heavyweight, and even though they're the main event on the main card, I think they're only agreeing to a 3-minute fight or a 3-round fight. It doesn't have it posted yet, which is normally the sign of that. They're still in contractual negotiations, which is weird because that fight happens this Saturday. Who do you think takes that fight?
Man, Sakai, I really like Sakai. I've been watching Sakai since Bellator, and he's one of these fighters that he's not really in shape, he's not chiseled, but he's just a warrior, man. And he's a very good Muay Thai kickboxer. He's Brazilian, but I think he's also Japanese. There's a big Japanese community in Brazil, and has just classic Muay Thai, right? The problem with that is you're fighting Overeem, who's one of the best kickboxers in the world.
One of the best Dutch-style kickboxers in the world, which is
Yeah.
a really good counter for Muay Thai.
That's a tough one, man. Like you said, Dutch versus Muay Thai, right? So you're looking at the difference between a better boxing possibly in Dutch, but that being said, I'm going to go with Sakai on this. I'm going to take the limb, and if you're open to taking Overeem, hey, I don't know what you think in this fight, but I'm going to go with Sakai. I think he's more hungry. I think he's a hungrier fighter right now. And this is his shot. And I don't think he's an Edmund Taruvian, who's the guy who lost the Ronda Rousey's guy.
Shabazian.
Shabazian. I don't think he's a Shabazian. I think he could really be a champ. I think he could be a champ.
Sakai's already taken an L, so he's not trying to do the Shabazian thing of I'm undefeated. But if this were a kickboxing match, I would be more readily accepting to taking Alistair Overeem on a whim. Just make, of course he's going to win. This is his round. This is his fight. But this is an MMA fight. And from what I've seen from Sakai, he's got some really good skills as far as keeping a fight from going in a place that he doesn't want it to go to. But I will take Alistair Overeem solely based on the fact that he's coming off a loss. He's needing a victory to stay relevant in the current heavyweight talks, because as far as the current jostling for the top 10 positions, I think Alistair Overeem, for the first time in forever, might find himself outside of the top 10 very shortly. And I think Sakai would be a great person for him to try to prove that he still is relevant in the conversation. Because if you're not fighting for belts, what are you fighting for? And if you can't beat Sakai, you can't fight for a belt. So I think Alistair Overeem knows the consequences for him if he loses this fight. So I'll take Alistair Overeem. I'll take that bet.
I think, if I was going to bet money on it, I would definitely bet it on Overeem, the Demolition Man. But yeah, I just think that Sakai's hungrier, man. I just think he's hungrier. I think that he's experienced enough. I think he's going to come in with a good game plan. it's going to be very, very tough for him because Alistar likes an opponent like Sakai.
Mm-hmm.
He really does, and he really thrives against it. He doesn't do so well against these giant power puncher guys that can knock you out in a minute notice. But yeah, I could see Sakai really trying to break down Alistar's legs, really trying to land some body shots, maybe try to clinch and get against the cage, wear him out a little bit, put his weight on him a little bit. It's not going to be a ground fight. It's
No.
going to be it's going to I would say it's going to be a finish in the first 2 rounds on this fight.
Okay. I could see that happening. If Sakai strings his combos together, he wins. That's the way I see this happening. Alistair Overeem has an issue with processing high amounts of information. If you're just throwing 1 or 2 shots, he's more than likely to pick you apart. But if Sakai is able to put it together and really throw some 3 to 5 hit combinations in there, finishes with the leg kick, finds a way to throw body kicks every time he's backing up. Alistair Overeem has this thing where he doesn't switch his feet. He comes at you the way he does. And because of his body length, he's got so much torso available to kick. Like, I think he has probably one of the biggest torsos in the UFC as far as because of the fact that he has the Dutch stance, he tends to leave that elbow a little open. And if you can get him to throw that right cross baited, you can definitely throw a switch body kick to really make it a tough night for him, because he does overcommit to his cross a little bit. That's one of his bread and butters. So I think if Sakai is going to want to win, he's going to really have to study some tape, because if one thing he has in his favor is that also Overeem is a bit of an old dog and he isn't really bringing too many new tricks to the table. So if he can really do his film work and really bone up on his opponent, I think he's got a great chance. But if he's not getting a great camp, getting 8 hours of sleep every night and watching his videos as a good little boy, it's going to be a short night. And Alistair Overeem has no problem taking advantage of any leaky holes you might have in your dam.
100%, dude. And I think the body kicks, that's a really good point. That's a really, really good point. And Sakai does have body kicks too.
Mm-hmm.
He has some really strong body kicks. He's really loose too. Doesn't carry too much muscle mass. I think he's going to be really fluid. He just can't get caught.
Yeah.
By that big overhand, by that big right where Alistar just throws that right hand, boom, comes in with the left hook, right hook, then comes in with the knees and the clinch. If Sakai can move around, land some body kicks, I think that's his best shot at winning it.
Well, it's also normally not Alistair Overeem that has the speed advantage, but here we are. I think he's the faster fighter between him and Sakai. And I think that might be the way his coaches might want to take the fight as far as strategically. I think the best thing to do would be to utilize your speed advantage and really just flood him with information. Follow up every or start every combination with a jab, follow up every jab with a cross. Throw hands in his face, get in there with the Dutch kickboxing, just really flood the sensory so that you can set up for those deeper strikes later in the fight. I don't think Alistair Overeem is going to win this fight quickly. If he wins, I think it's going to go deep into the second round. He's going to have to do a little bit more homework and a little bit more picking apart, because this young guy is gunning for his legendary status.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all right. Let's go ahead and save the other fights for our graphic that we'll be putting up this week on who will start off the next month, the chase for Mr. September. Every month is going to come with a new name. You're the King of August, Don Stoner. He's the King of August. Give it up for him, ladies and gentlemen. He deserves it. Well-fought battle.
W, baby.
With a finishing record of 14-9. Well done. That's a very dominant victory, I'd say. So what we're going to do is we're going to reset the records. Right now, you are 1-0 as far as our monthly records. But September has begun anew. September 5th will be the next fights. We'll see where we stand once we release the graphic of who's choosing who for fights. Anything else you want to talk about, Don? Anything that we missed?
Man, I think we pretty much covered it. There's some good Bellator coming in. Some good Bellator fights coming in. Scott Coker's been yapping at the jaw about how Bellator has the best light heavyweights. And
they did spend a bunch of money on a couple new ones.
Yeah, I don't know. Dana White's talking about how he only gives the guys he doesn't want to Bellator, which is something we already know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, Ryan Bader had got beat by one of the Russian guys, one of Fedor's guys, Vadim. Bellator's always had a lot of the Russian guys, especially from Fedor's camp, Red Devil, out there in not Belarus. Geez, where is it from? Stary Oskal. And I just love the Russian fighters from Stary Oskal, Fedor's guys, and they're really doing well in Bellator right now. But there's no competition from UFC and Bellator right now. I mean, I actually think Bellator has better lightweights than they have heavyweights. Right now they're actually swooping up some of the best featherweights. They have really, really good featherweights. They have really good lightweights. If Michael Chandler leaves and goes to Bellator, now Bellator is not going to have the best lightweights or some of the best lightweights. I think some of the best featherweights and lightweights are actually in Bellator right now. It's hard for people to see that, but not the light heavyweights. So yeah, that's been the talk over MMA Junkie, whatever you look at, Bloody Elbow.
And that's what I believe we addressed this the last one too, where I was talking about how they've been making some major moves as far as who they're selecting and they're picking and the people that they're throwing their money at. There really was some interesting moves, and I think that they've kind of been setting up for this a long time. We should be covering them a little bit more. So I think that's a good idea, Don. We're going to go ahead and be talking about Bellator a little bit more. And if they become a little even more relevant, we might even incorporate them into our win-loss record situation there. I do know the next event is September 11th, and it's going to be Davis versus Machida 2. Lyoto Machida, of course, one of their light heavyweights out there, still making noise, still winning fights. So yeah, we'll be keeping closer track with the Bellator events too. That's a good idea, Don. I like that. But yeah, I guess that does it for this episode 9 of Stoner versus Stoner. Thanks for tuning in, you guys. Make sure you check out our YouTube channel and just give us a view just so we can keep our numbers up. Follow us, subscribe to us, follow us on our Facebook page, Stoner versus Stoner. You can find me at all social media outlets at Chino Bra, ChinoBrah. You need that H or you're going to find a different Chino. Don, go ahead and tell the audience where they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram at dstoner_LWJJ, Lone Wolf Jiu-Jitsu. Give me an ad, give me a follow. And you can find me on Facebook at Don Stoner. But mainly, guys, just let's keep going. Stoner versus Stoner. Please post on our Facebook. Please add. Please share your friends. Share with your friends. And yeah, if you want to make all the money on the bets, hey, I think September may be Chino's month. I don't know.
I'm feeling pretty good about September. I gotta say, I'm feeling pretty good. There's some good fights down the pipe, and I think I got some info. We'll see. Only time will tell. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Make sure you catch us next week for episode 10, our DECA episode that we'll celebrate, making it to the 10th episode that makes us podcast mini vets. Until then, guys, make sure you tune into the fights. Support your local fighters. Support your gyms. Support whoever you can. Enjoy the fights. Aloha.